But Joe Burrow, Tom, is he healthy? Is he weighed down by the calf injury here? What do you think, man? Because something just does not look right for him.
No, he's not right at all, and it's probably because of this calf injury, like we talked about last week. And I think you misspoke there. Our level of concern was high, our expectations for him were low, but and it's all because of the calf injury. Like it's his leg that he pushes off of for throw power. So if you don't have your full power then from the legs, then you've got to improvise by using more arm, using more torso, whatever, which is not what he typically does. So his throwing pattern is hindered by this, and it's showing in his stat line. Like he's not playing well at all. Like I said last week, I think we need to sit him until he shows that he can be the Joe Burrow that we know. And that may be this week, but it also may not be for a couple more weeks. I'm not going to risk my quarterback getting me 6 fantasy points by putting him out there when
No.
there's a lot of guys in the waiver wire who are playing well. We've got Jordan Loves, we've got Brock Purdy's who you could easily get 18 to 20 points out of that won't win you the week, but they won't kill your week.
It's not going to be flashy, but it's not going to be, like you said, Joe Burrow. And no, I did mean what I say. I think I just said it the wrong way. We said our level of concern for the Bengals as a whole was low. But yeah, you mentioned last week, like you were kind of ahead of the curve telling people probably don't play Burrow. Heck, I'm in 2 leagues, which is ridiculous to even think about that. 2 of my 7 or 8 leagues, people are dropping Burrow. Now, I wouldn't say
that's crazy.
Go that far because I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He just has to have time to get right. I mean, again, man, the Bengals are lucky they're not 0-3. They're 1-2. At least they got to win. Do you see a world? I mean, it's such an impossible question, Tom, but would you, if it was up to you, would you sit him for a week or two just to try to get him right? Yeah. So I don't understand why they're not doing that. Why not sit, not fantasy wise? I'm talking real NFL wise. Why not sit him for a week or two? Are they just scared they don't want to give anything up? What do you think? I mean, again, just doesn't look like himself. He needs time, I think.
Well, he even said the risk was going 0-3. So it's clearly situational. If they were 2-1, 3-0, they may sit him for a little bit to let him get right. But, it's one of those situations where there's no right answer because you sit him and you lose. Oh, you should have played him. You play him and he hurts it more. Oh, you should have sat him. Unfortunately, there just isn't concrete 100% black and white he's ready to play or he's not ready to play testing. That doesn't exist. There is a lot of stuff we can look at like range of motion, strength, power outputs, etc. That can guide the decision to return to play or not. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's so competitive too. It's going to take a lot to say, hey, you can't play for someone like Joe Burrow. If I were them, I would probably rest him, especially since you just got a win. You're in the win column now, and we know how hot this team can get. Even if he sits a couple weeks, they can rattle off 4, 5, 6 consecutive wins. But it's a really tricky situation.
A lot of gray area, and that's why you're here with us, Tom. But so far, man, Joe Burrow, just a passer rating of 66 through 3 weeks, and fantasy-wise, quarterback number 30. So, again, I wouldn't go as far as dropping him. I think that's crazy. I'm trying to claim him in those leagues that he was dropped. But like Tom said, evaluate your quarterback situation, right? Don't throw him back out there to get you 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points. And God forbid he even gets pulled from the game at some point because of the injury. So throw a guy in there that will be consistent for you. Doesn't have to be a stud, major upside play. I would be safe. But with the other guys, I mean, you can't get too cute, though. You can't sit Chase. You can't sit Higgins. Mixon, of course, like you're going to play him. Don't get crazy. But even for this week, Tom, just to finish off with Burrow, another lowly projected game. They play Tennessee. They're always a scrappy defense, only projected 41 points total in this game. So I'm trying to stay away from Burrow. But again, you can't sit your studs in the other options. Moving over to Derek Carr. So he sprained AC joint. That is a shoulder injury, Tom. And why don't you tell us more about that for Derek Carr?
Yes, so AC stands for acromioclavicular. There's a piece of the shoulder blade called the acromion, and then your clavicle is your collarbone. So the AC joint is really the junction of where the shoulder meets the torso. And it's designed to move to some degree, controlled motion in that joint. It's not a massive motion, but it does need to move when the shoulder moves, like throwing a football. So with this type of injury, there's a number of different grades. Typically, we see grades 1 through 3. With this injury, there's actually 1 through 6. Grades 1 and 2 respond well to conservative care and rehab. Grade 3 kind of hit or miss if rehab's going to work for a surgery. Anything beyond a grade 3 is going to need surgery. We know he's not getting surgery. This is a grade 1 or 2 injury. So with that, he needs to get the swelling down. He needs to get the range of motion back and regain strength of that shoulder, which I do not believe will happen in 1 week. I do not believe he's going to play this week. I don't think he even thinks he's going to play this week. Now, the challenge is going to be when he does come back. We know this is a guy who's played through a fractured back before. We know he's a tough dude. The challenge is going to be, is he going to return before his shoulder's really ready from a production standpoint? It's his throwing shoulder. So every time he throws the ball, this injury is going to get stressed. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to get worse with throwing, but a bad hit could certainly make it worse. But whenever your shoulder's hurting, that could certainly impact power and accuracy. So whether Carr plays this week, which I doubt he will, next week or the week after, I would expect a dip in his production in that first game back. And being a guy who in 1 QB leagues, we're probably not starting anyway. He may be one of those quarterbacks that somebody who stashes 2 QBs has. You may want to lean to the other guy whenever Carr does return. In 2 QB leagues, he may still be startable when he plays, simply because there's going to be 24 quarterbacks that are started. There's not a whole lot else, and there's probably none on the waivers. It'll really just depend if you have 3 quarterbacks on your roster, who your other guy is. But definitely not expecting much from Carr this week, and a dip in production whenever he does return.
Fair enough. Well said. And another thing to add, Saints are 2-1, right? They could play it a little bit more conservatively. And, at the helm, Tom, waiting just to chuck the ball down the field is Jameis Winston. So, I mean, in terms of Derek Carr,
I would love a couple Jameis games.
Listen, it might be better for the wide receivers, because the wide receivers don't have to worry about the interceptions for a fantasy output, right? Like,
they don't.
Just one guy at a time, right? Olave, I mean, he's basically quarterback proof. I'm not calling him Devontae Adams, but you're going to play Olave. It could impact Thomas maybe a little bit, but again, that's if Derek Carr plays, right? If Derek Carr doesn't play, I almost look at it like it's going to be the same thing. They're going to open it up. They're 2-1. They're even favorites to win this week, even without Carr likely playing, right? A little frustrating game. Tom, we talked about Rashid Shaheed, had a return touchdown, but not a really good game right there. I expect him to have a little bit of a bounce back here, just such a speedster. But backfield, Tom, I know you like Kendre. Not so much of a good game for really their entire backfield.
Disappointed me. Yeah, he let me down last week.
9 for 34. Tony Jones Jr. 8 for 31, I think. Taysom Hill 4 for 12. I mean, it doesn't get easier this week. Bucks have a pretty good defense, so their run game I'm worried about. But I think those guys, you could probably still float Michael Thomas in there as a flex, and Olave. Not much to worry about there with Derek Carr. But we will continue to look at that. And Tom, would you say he's a 2, right? Or a grade 2 out of 6, you said you think he is, or 1 or 2?
They're not going to tell us, but if he's not getting surgery, it's either a grade 1 or 2.
Okay. So things look a little bit optimistic despite him being hurt. Anthony Richardson, concussion protocol, but he looks like he's back at practice. Is he all systems go, you think, if he's back?
Yeah, full practice today. That makes it very likely that he plays this week, and we already know that he will be getting a starting job back. So he's looked really good, at least from a fantasy standpoint. So expect him to be back on the field this week.
He's the man there. Colts last week, even without him, impressively beating the Ravens in overtime, who just they're like one of the worst 2-1 teams I've ever seen. I don't even want to talk about them right now. But Tom, the only player in the NFL with 8 or more catches in all 3 games is Michael Pittman, looking like a major value. I passed on that dude everywhere. I was like, you know what? Richardson, rookie. I don't know if he's going to be able to throw the ball and sustain it. He's peppering him, man. Mike Pittman looking like a pretty big steal so far this year, and Richardson himself looking like a steal.
And Zach Moss, how about him?
Oh, my goodness gracious. And I just saw something about JT, how he's saying, I mean, we knew this, but now he's coming out and just clearly saying, I don't want to play for the Colts anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting. He could possibly be traded. We'll see how that goes. I made a bet with, I think, one of my friends. I was like, no way, the Colts are going to win. I think their over-under was 6 or something. Not looking good so far. 2 wins already here, 3 games through the season. Anthony Richardson, man, I'm surprised, impressed with him, and they got to win without him, which is even better.